Okay, so Bucks versus Hawks, game one. Hawks on the road pull off an amazing upset win, winning 116 to 113. This game was a joy to watch. Like coming off of the Bucks versus Nets series where like game 7 was amazing, like a couple games were good when KD went off, but in general the series was kind of ugly basketball, especially game 3. Like a lot of iso ball, a lot of brick threes, and just sloppy turnovers. This game, on the other hand, was a joy to watch. Both teams in this game didn't shoot the three very well. Hawks shot about 25%, Bucks lower, 22%. So not shooting the three very well, but the ball movement and the cutting and the pick and rolls in this game were just phenomenal. This game had so many memorable moments, like Trae Young throwing an alley oop off the backboard to John Collins, who posters. You had Trae coming off a screen and getting open, left wide open, shimmies before hitting a three. In the fourth quarter, Jrue and Giannis were running the pick and roll incredibly well, throwing lobs. In the second quarter, you had Jrue splitting a hedge, driving all the way to the rim and dunking. And the cherry on top is a game is exciting and great to watch when even PJ Tucker gets in on the action. Like in the first half, he gets Gallinari with like a jab step, drives baseline, goes for a reverse layup, doesn't get it, but like just an incredibly exciting game to watch as a neutral fan. So let's take a deeper dive into this game and break down some of the things that went wrong and right for each team. So starting with the Hawks, like Hawks first half, really carried by Trae Young. I think he had 25 points in the first half. And they kind of seemed in trouble because you didn't know where the next scoring or the second option was going to be on this team. Like I think at that time, I think John Collins maybe had 9 points, and he seemed to be like the guy that was going to step up. I think Gallinari had a few buckets, but you really didn't see that great of a game from Kevin Herter or from Bogdan, who seems to be a bit injured still. And then on the defensive end, I was interested to see how they would set up. Like going into the series, I didn't know who they would put on Giannis because John Collins probably can't D him up. Solomon Hill, don't know if he could do that either. So they actually end up going with Clint Capella. They stick him on Giannis, and he actually did a fairly good job considering. And I think a lot of credit has to go to Capella for this playoff run. Like last round, defending Joel Embiid for the entire series, which is a tough matchup considering Embiid's size versus Capella, who's like 6'10", I believe. And now this game where he gets put on Giannis, which again, tough matchup, but does a pretty good job, defends the post pretty well, gets 19 boards, couple blocks. From the Bucks side of things, the first half goes well for them. Budenholzer finally brought back some of the players from the bench that we didn't really see in the Net series. Bobby Portis had a good, I think, 9 points in the first half just coming off the bench. We saw a bit of Jeff Teague. We saw Forbes. And from the Nets series, I think the Bucks definitely made adjustments for this. Like they were playing so much quicker, really pushing it on transition, which for Giannis worked especially well, and something I don't understand why they didn't do in the last series. And in the first half, it looked like the Hawks were struggling to get stops. Like when they went small with like John Collins guarding Giannis, Giannis could get anything he wanted in the half court or in transition. And then when they played Capella on Giannis, like in transition, Capella just couldn't get to the spot and defend him properly. And that was really a theme we saw throughout the entire game when Giannis got out in transition quickly or the Bucks got out in transition quickly. The Hawks really didn't have an answer for that. Like it's hard to stop Giannis when Capella is not as agile and quick getting back on defense. So the second half starts and Trae Young catches fire in the third quarter and just absolutely starts scorching. Bucks were playing a drop coverage where the big sags in the paint, and with the Hawks, like you just cannot do that. Like they were just screening and re-screening for Trae. Like Jrue is a great defender, but there's only so much he can do. And on the play where Trae shimmies before he hits the three, you see it. Like I think it's John Collins screens again, gets Trae open, and like Jrue just has no help on that play. And that's one thing I didn't understand from Mike Budenholzer. Like he didn't play Brook Lopez that many minutes, and Brook Lopez is usually the one you see just sagging in the paint. So Like Bobby Portis could come up and help out on those plays. Like I don't see why he's dropping that far. And also because when they would screen and Giannis's guy was a screener, like Giannis would switch and guard Trae. So just a baffling decision from Mike Budenholzer and something that he needs to address because the Hawks are just going to continue doing that, setting high screens, getting Trae open. And that's when I kind of knew that like the Bucks might be in trouble here from Trae because I think at one point they interviewed Mike Budenholzer and they asked him at halftime like, "Oh, how are you going to stop Trae? Like, how are you going to slow him down? Like, what are you going to do on defense?" I think his response was something along the lines like, "We're going to get into him without fouling him." And they repeated the question like okay, what specifically? And he just has no answer. Like he doesn't say like, "Oh, we're going to change up and we're going to like hedge some of the screens or we're going to do something like double him and get the ball out of his hands." Like he just doesn't have an answer for the interviewer. And so that brings us to some other things that Mike Budenholzer kind of sold on. First off was just the times he would take Giannis out of the game. Like in the first half, Giannis plays three or four separate occasions, and then get brought out, and he couldn't really build momentum, like playing such short stretches. And the other, despite having a very good first half, Bobby Portis doesn't see the court for that many minutes in the second half, which again, very baffling decision. And so as a result, this game was very close going into the fourth quarter. And I give credit to Jrue Holiday because he had a very tough series versus the Nets, and he bounced back tonight, like had an incredible game, 33 points, 10 dimes. He shot the ball like very well and ran the pick and roll in the fourth quarter with Giannis, amazing to perfection. And that brings me to my next point. Every time the Bucks seem to be getting on a roll, Chris Middleton would grab the ball, run an ISO play, and just brick it. Like he was terrible this game, not just in his shooting, like 0 for 9 and 6 for 23, but like he killed the momentum of the game by just ISOing every time the Bucks seemed to be getting it going. Which brings us to late in the fourth quarter, where I think the Bucks were trailing by like maybe one or two possessions, like around a minute left, and you think Bucks are going to run like a good play for this and get back in this. And what do? Instead of running like the pick and roll with Giannis that has worked very often, and then like kicking it to the corner if they try and close down the paint, instead he just runs like a Chris Middleton, another isolation play, and just doesn't work out. And that's just something we've seen over and over and over again with this Bucks team. Like down the stretch, they just do not run the right plays to get them buckets. It's just as simple as that. And so as a result, the Atlanta Hawks upset them in game one, win on the road. Trae goes off for 48, 11, and 7. And this Hawks team just continues to exceed everyone's expectations. Like they're punching so far above their weight, it's actually crazy. And not only that, but they're like an amazing road team. I think this is 6 games that they've won on the road. And now they've taken a road game away from a Bucks team that didn't lose at home court the entire Nets series. So who knows with this series, honestly. Like I thought the Bucks would probably win this in 5 or 6, and you never know. I expect the Bucks to bounce back in game 2, like Chris Middleton to have a better game, them to defend Trae a lot better, help on those screens. And I think Giannis, like, I still don't know if the Hawks have an answer for Giannis. Like, I don't know what they're going to do to try and stop him because he seems to be getting whatever he wants. But look, one thing is clear, this is going to be an amazingly entertaining series, and I'm all for it.